Well, the sun shone down on sensational Suzuka, and as always, one driver and one team stood head and shoulders above the others. Max Verstappen back to race-winning ways. Red Bull Racing now confirmed 2023 Constructors World Champions. It was a dominant display. It was a beautiful drive, and with two McLarens on the podium, a sign of things to come. Welcome, folks, to your post-race show from the paddock here in Suzuka with me, Will Buxton. Delighted to be joined by Pietro Fittipaldi and by Alex Brundle. And guys, what we saw from Max Verstappen yesterday in qualifying, just a precursor to a perfect drive today.
Yeah, I think it was domination, as we saw in qualifying. Honestly, I thought he was going to win by even a bigger margin. I was saying maybe even 50 seconds, but it wasn't that big.
Just an outstanding drive, managed to hold the lead down towards turn one, challenged hard by both McLarens, and that was really only the moment he was challenged, the only moment he was challenged by anyone, and he just sauntered off into the distance to the tune of 19 seconds.
So much so he didn't even need his teammates' help today. Sergio Perez with, I think, an afternoon to forget. A bit of controversy as well in the way in which he dealt with some of the penalties handed out to him, or certainly the way that the team dealt with those. We will deal with those later in the show, but for now we've got a number of drivers that we want to talk to about their Grand Prix today. Yuki Tsunoda, welcome to the show. I know it wasn't the points that you wanted today, Yuki, but how was it to drive in front of this crowd here, all cheering your name?
Yeah, I mean, from obviously Thursday, the amount of support I've got was, a lot, and especially yesterday qualifying and the race today. I mean, the energy I got from the fans, and obviously it's so a shame that I wasn't able to score points today, but yeah, still definitely unforgettable Grand Prix. Yeah,
absolutely.
Did you expect a little more from the race today? You've been showing such incredible pace throughout qualifying, super quick. You can't hear it because you're in the car, but the grandstands erupt every time you cross the line. But did you expect a little bit more race pace out of the upgraded car?
Well, yeah, there was pace, to be honest, but I just stuck behind the car. So, I mean, I didn't know what they're doing, but in the end, yeah, I didn't able to maximize my pace, to be honest. So it's a shame, but at the same time, yeah, also the turn one crash in the incident in the start lap. I had a good start, and a lot of cars had a bit of collide in front of me, and I have to back off a lot. So that made me a little bit backstep in the out lap, but still, I still get my everything. Yeah.
New contract in your pocket for next year. We're coming back to Suzuka earlier in the season next year, so you don't have to wait long for another home race.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's first time April, so I think April is a good time. I think a lot of cherry blossom for the Japan.
Yeah.
It's really touristy season as well, so I can't wait to come back here in actually a couple of months later. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Lovely stuff. Thank you for coming on the show, Yuki. We appreciate it, man. Arigato gozaimasu. Lovely to get Yuki on the show. As always, as I say, not the results at all that he wanted today, and possibly not the result that the team deserved. Big upgrades on that car. We saw right at the start of the race how big the undercut was going to be here when Yuki pitted from behind his teammate Liam Lawson, jumped him. Then they reversed that for the next stops, and Liam ultimately took that position back. They finished P11, P12. For me, a little bit under where they deserved to today.
Yeah, because they've had the pace since they've got the upgrades. Even in Singapore, they were really strong with Liam. And I was impressed with the side-by-side racing they had in the beginning of the race. They held like 4 corners,
brilliant,
side-by-side in Sector 1, and those are corners where it's super high speed. I mean, one guy runs a little bit wide, and they're going to make contact.
I think a lot of that midfield were caught out by the early contact, and I bet we'll hear a lot of the drivers that come and join us go, yeah, I just carried a little bit of damage all the way through the race. When you have those side-to-side nudges, you lose a tiny little bit, and Yuki, as he was saying, caught out with the traffic throughout the whole race.
Very few drivers emerged unscathed from the first lap. On the run down to turn one, we're going to take a look at it right now. Lewis Hamilton getting edged wide just as the Ferraris and Sergio Perez got bunched together, but it was further towards the back where the big damage took place. Alex Albon being lifted up into the air just there by Valtteri Bottas. So much going on there.
Yeah, a massive amount going on, and I'm surprised to see so much bunching, actually, down towards what's not really, and it's the sort of start you would expect to see somewhere like Monza where the field concertina's up, but I think everybody wanted to be on that cleaner outside line. We saw drivers sweeping through there all day, taking positions away. And I think just that bit of jostling for position was costing drivers. A lot of drivers like Lewis Hamilton looking to the inside and then actually being so focused on the driver on the inside that they find that they're shoveled out wide on the outside.
But Pietro, as you say, wonderful side-by-side battling between Liam Lawson and Yuki Tsunoda. Liam Lawson, of course, who was unsure whether this will have been his last Grand Prix or not. Looked like he was just out there having the time of his life for as long as he could.
Yeah, because like you said, you don't know when he's going to come back, and I think he wasn't cautious anymore. He was like, I'm going to be aggressive over here, and he was. And honestly, I was still a bit surprised. I'm like, man, they're battling it out pretty hard here in the first couple laps. But it was exciting to see, and I think they both raced well and very fair.
You think an element of Liam wanting to prove Red Bull have made the wrong choice there by putting that fight on and ultimately finishing ahead of Yuki Tsunoda?
Definitely so, and I think also an element of Liam now having nothing to lose. You know, you look back at the previous races, perhaps before that was announced, if he did have contact with his teammate in those races, game over for that potential seat. Now that game looking like it's over anyway for next year, so he could just go for it and put the big moves on him.
I mean, let's be honest, it's Red Bull. Anything could change at any race, at any point during the World Championship. We've seen that this year with AlphaTauri, a team who, let's not forget, last year decided on their driver for this year on the basis of one race. 4 very impressive races for the driver this year, doesn't get a seat.
Well, it was around 2 months ago that Liam Lawson hadn't driven a Grand Prix car in race conditions, and that shows you the progression. And then everybody's extremely disappointed, including me, that he's not continuing on in that car. But it just does show you how quickly the winds of that program can change. There'll be someone else stepping up, or indeed Daniel Ricciardo, when he returns to that cockpit, has every chance of doing an excellent job. He may well be forgotten if he's out of that car for a year.
And we know one of the primary reasons that Daniel's even been brought back in is to apply pressure to Sergio Perez in that second seat in Red Bull. And if Sergio doesn't step up next year, can't see it being long before Daniel might potentially make that move. As we know, Red Bull do like to make these kind of moves. Now, let's talk about McLaren. We'll get on to talking about Sergio and that penalty a little bit later. But McLaren, Pietro, what a season they've had. From 9th or 10th fastest in pre-season testing to saying, give us time, wait until the upgrade comes. Then that upgrade come around Silverstone, Austria time. They made one leap. Then they brought the next upgrade package to Singapore and another leap, fighting for the podium. Today, locking out 2/3 of the podium.
Yeah, I mean, they've definitely been making moves since preseason testing. Like I said, I remember being there in person, watching the McLaren cars, and they were weaker than the Haas cars. They were right in the back of the field, and for a team to make that change throughout the season in terms of performance is something that I rarely see in Formula One, to be able to make that performance gain throughout the season. When you bring developments, I mean, you get little gains, but what they went from being 9th team in the back to now being the second best team on track.
And Alex, as Lando said on the slowdown lap, we're coming for Red Bull. And you can believe him with the strides they've taken.
I really can. What's so impressive about the way they've gone about it is how they've, with the car performance, immediately morphed into a front-running team. There was never that moment where they were spilling it strategically, falling down in the pit stops with a pit crew under more pressure because now it's over 3rd instead of being over 17th. And that's tough to do when all of a sudden, you know, theoretically it's the same pit stop, whether you're pit stopping over 12th or whether you're pit stopping over the lead, but in reality it's not, is it? It changes the game. And McLaren just flicked a switch and immediately delivered at the front of the field.
Made the right choice today, would you argue, in switching the drivers around? When you look at the gap between those two drivers at the end, Lando clearly with the better race pace.
Yeah, but as well, I think they had a little bit variation in strategy, but because they had both cars fighting with Verstappen in the beginning of the race, I think they wanted to split the strategy a little bit to add pressure on Max and Red Bull to, you know, kind of be on the back foot there in terms of deciding when to do the pit stop. So I think when you have 2 cars versus 1, you got to mix it up a little bit, see if you get something.
When we talk about 2 cars versus 1, it was 2 cars very much versus each other for a lot of the Grand Prix today, with a number of teams, one of those teams in particular being Mercedes. Now, we don't normally see the Mercedes guys go wheel to wheel, but it felt like there was a little bit of afters in there as well. George Russell not happy towards the end of the Grand Prix with the moves Lewis Hamilton had put on him earlier. What did you take out of their fight during the Grand Prix?
Well, they're on a clearly different strategy. George on a one-stopper and Lewis on the more traditional two-stop. But what interested me is if you're going to make that plan, why fight at the beginning of the Grand Prix if you're not going to fight at the end of the Grand Prix? George obviously feeling the same way behind the wheel of his car. Look, I can see why at the end, George was asked to cede the position for the benefit of the team. I can also see why they delayed Lewis Hamilton to try to help George out with the DRS effect against the Ferrari. It didn't work out quite so well for him as it worked out for Sainz last week. But it's going to be an interesting debrief between them, isn't it? And there are a lot of teams with, down the road, McLaren I would include, as well as Mercedes, with a very equally matched driver pairing and a performant car, and it's a problem.
Feels to me like there might have been a decision at Mercedes that whoever was behind at the time of the scheduled first pit stop would be put onto a two-stopper. Thus why they fought each other so hard for that position.
Well, we do know these kind of decisions exist. For example, Charles Leclerc back in Singapore being asked to drop back and protect the leader of the race at that point, who was Carlos Sainz. We will never know, will we? We will never know whether that was the deal between those Mercedes drivers. One thing for sure is that if George is prepared to, the kind of guy that George is, if George was prepared to say that over the radio, I think he'll be prepared to say that plus 150% in the debrief later on.
Well, they're going to the debrief shortly, but first they have to talk to Greg Stewart in the pen. So let's hear what they said to him.
Well, Lewis, a battling drive from you, just managing to stay ahead of Carlos at the end. Do you feel like that was the maximum today?
It was definitely the maximum. Today it was a tough day in the office, to be honest. Real struggle out there with our car. But trying to give it absolutely everything to try and get ahead at least of one of the Ferraris, which I'm grateful we did through great teamwork. And yeah, but we're a long way off. We've got a lot of work to do.
It was your teammate who you kept finding on track. Are you happy with how that all played out, or do you think you just need to have a little team debrief just to talk about rules of fighting in the future?
Well, I mean, for sure we'll talk offline. That's the best way always to do it. Our ultimate goal is to try and get ahead of the Ferraris, and that's what my goal was today. And it's to beat the Ferraris in the Constructors' Championship. That's all that matters. We're not fighting for driver's position in championship because, firstly, we're not close, and secondly, we're not fighting for the championship. So now it's about just getting the maximum points for the team, and I think that's what we did in the end.
Well, George, I like your bold strategy as much as the next person, but did that one work out for you, the one stop?
I don't think anything was gained, nothing was lost. I think the three stop was probably closer to the optimum than the one stop was, but the one stop gave you the opportunity in case there was a safety car. It wasn't like Piastri flew by. It was only right at the end of the straight and kind of doing it around the outside of turn one. So, I'm glad I tried it. Happy with the job that we did because, with the pace of the car this weekend, that was the maximum.
You and Lewis seemed magnetic today. You kept finding each other on track. Some interesting battles, some interesting team radio. How did you see it from your side, and will you debrief after this?
It's, obviously in the moment there's you say some things on the radio just to get that frustration out. We obviously lost a bit of time together, but all part of racing. I felt a lot more comfortable and faster in the car at that time of the race. Obviously made the first overtake, lost it down the straight, which was annoying, and then had the second chance where he had his right to the line. So part of racing, it wasn't for any big positions, and at the end of the day, didn't change our race result whatsoever. So on to the next.
Right, there we go. Think that's put that one to bed. No war between the drivers, a kiss and a cuddle afterwards, and everyone's friends. Let's move on to Alpine, who both started out at the points today. Both drivers finished in the points today, I think somewhat against expectation.
No, I think I was expecting Alpine to finish in the points, but obviously they're in that kind of midfield. They're always there fighting between 6th to 10th, around there. And I think they're just trying to, I want to see Alpine fighting, for podiums more often, in my opinion.
What made the difference today?
Well, I think they had a nice clean race, despite a little bit of contact for Ocon early on in the Grand Prix, especially Gasly had a nice clean race. You've got to remember that a lot of those drivers who Alpine would normally fight with at the back end of the points found themselves out of the Grand Prix today. You know, you've got Albon out early on in the Williams to cite an example. So they gained positions as a result of that. I also think that AlphaTauri perhaps didn't show the pace that they might have done. All of those things came together with a nice clean run and put them in the back end of the points.
Lance Stroll had a great start as well and was up there fighting around that P10, P11 spot. So as you say, was it just fortune that favoured them?
I mean, no, I really don't think there's such thing as fortune, a total fortune result in a motor race. You know, you've got to keep it out of trouble in the melee down to turn 1. You've got to have the pace in the car, which for the midfield they did. And they did a very traditional set of strategies. They also lent on that hard tyre very, very well and prepared themselves to do that because there are only a couple of sets of those to use. They prepared themselves to do that through free practice and had that option in the race.
Pietro, you said you expect to see Alpine fighting for the podium week in, week out. It's been such an up and down season for them. One race weekend, absolutely on it. The next weekend, falling further down, maybe not even making it out of Q1. As Alex has alluded to and pointed to on his grid walk, they've had so many technical issues throughout this year. Is that just the nature of Formula One this season, that it is so difficult to judge weekend to weekend who's going to be where, or is this indicative of something deeper at Alpine?
Well, I expect them to be up there because, I mean, it's Alpine, it's a manufactured team, you know, it's a big team, and, you know, they had a lot of changes this year, so you got a guy over here that might know a little bit better.
I was asking.
Hello. He's not hiding behind any of us.
He's in a good mood. Great run, man.
Thank you, Will.
Happy with it? Because let's be honest, that run down to turn 1, yeah. Tell us about that first.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No. Yeah. It was a crazy run down to turn 1. Unfortunately, no one could have made any differences. You know, it was a bit of a sandwich incident, and you know, I got a touch on the rear left and got a puncture. So, you know, I was to the back of the field, ended the lap, you know, on 3 wheels, and was trying not to make too much damage. Which we still picked up, unfortunately. We still picked up damage for the rest of the race, but not that much. And from there on, it was a recovery drive. One stop hard, which is a bit weird. Oof. But, you know, we managed to get back in the points, and that's what matters today.
We've been discussing between ourselves what led to you getting back in the points. What do you think the key factor was? Just a solid race, or you think you had better pace than some of the midfield?
Probably, yeah, had better pace to some of the other cars. You know, good fight, good defending, trying not to lose time. You know, with the cars that were on 2 stops and in front of us. But yeah, clearly, I think the track position, this is something that has helped us. You know, with that 1 stop that, in the end, we did. I'm not going to say we planned, you know, to do it, but you know, that was our best shot at trying it. And from there on, it was very clear that we were gonna be able to do that.
After the promise, but then the heartache of Singapore, the fight back today to be in the points, how do you look towards Qatar and the next few Grand Prix?
Yeah, Qatar is a race that I really enjoy. You know, we've been there 2 years ago. We had a very good team result and a top 5 for me. And it's a track with such high grip, you know, such an enjoyable flow to it. And after coming to Suzuka, you know, it's 2 great tracks in a row. So yeah, I look forward to see what these cars, you know, have in reserve on the high speed. It should be very, very good fun. I hope the track hasn't evolved too much, you know, from 2 years ago. So yeah, we will see.
Lovely. Thanks for coming on the show, man.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Well done today. Merci, Esteban. You go, my friend. Good to hear. Good insight, of course, from Esteban. Right, shall we move on to Ferrari? Both cars in the top 10, got both cars scoring brilliantly today. Carlos, again, with the presence of mind to recognize that Mercedes were using his own trick against him with the DRS. But a weekend, Pietro, in which Charles Leclerc really turned things around. It was Carlos in the ascendancy since the summer break. Charles took that step back up to lead the team.
Yeah, I think it was important for him, you know, to kind of get this result, get a good top 5 finish, and they executed well, and I think maximized what they had, because we've seen that McLaren were stronger all weekend, you know, behind Red Bull. And Ferrari were there in par with Mercedes. They were able to split the Mercedes and still get that final position that was one better than the Mercedes cars.
Alex, do you think that Charles ever had a conceivable attempt at the podium today, or was it always McLaren's to lose?
I think the McLaren cars had a little bit in reserve over them, honestly. I mean, when you look at the strategies, I had some time with Andrea Sella before the race, and he said Ferrari are going to wish they had taken more hard tyres through free practice. They went medium. They had a medium-dominated strategy in the race, and I think the McLaren on that hard tyre was a little bit quicker, so they were well up the road, to be honest.
And for Carlos Sainz, difficult race in comparison to Singapore, which was just an absolutely wonderful evening for him. But very nearly there with Lewis Hamilton at the end. It could have been a 4-5 for Ferrari at the flag.
Yeah, even at the end, he was saying, let's go get him.
Yeah, let's
and
go,
I
let's
thought,
go.
like 2 laps to go, 3 laps to go, he's going to make the move. But that's what Esteban was saying. Here, it's so important, the track position. So if you don't have like a big delta in pace, you know, with fresher tires and you're behind a guy that has old tires, it's going to be very hard to make a move here. The only real place you can make a move is down into turn 1. But you have to be at least 1.5 seconds quicker a lap, I would say, to be able to make a solid move on someone.
Lovely stuff. Why don't we hear from Ferrari's 2 drivers? Carlos Sainz coming home today, P6, Charles Leclerc, P4.
Well, Charles, I enjoyed watching you do that. Battling drive from you, great fight with George Russell. Was that the maximum from today, do you think?
Yes, it was, because at one point I thought we could fight with the Mercedes, but with the McLaren, sorry. But at the end, Lando started to push, and he was much faster than us. And Oscar, at the end of the stints, he was pushing, and he was also faster than us. So, today that was the maximum we could do.
Has the pace of the McLaren been a bit of an eye-opener for Ferrari this weekend?
The Mercedes, you said?
McLaren.
Yeah, the McLaren, well, we know that in these kind of tracks they are very strong. So it is not a surprise, but we definitely need to understand what they are doing so good, especially in the first sector on the high speed. They are much stronger than us, so on that we will look at it.
Well, Carlos, you fought valiantly, but couldn't quite get Lewis at the end. Seems you've been teaching Mercedes your tricks from Singapore.
Yeah, I think we had a very good race today. We had very good pace. It's a pity about the second pit stop. It cost us the position with Lewis. We will need to have a look, because I was 4 seconds in front and I was 8 seconds behind after the stop, and I couldn't quite get him back. But I think I felt comfortable all race. I was very fast and had a good start. So, in general, happy.
A little break now to reflect upon a very strong period of races for you. Is your confidence pretty sky high at this juncture?
Yeah, I think also today, after a tricky quali yesterday, I went back in my rhythm. I had a very good race pace, always managing well the tires. So it was good that after a tricky quali yesterday, I could find myself back in the pace today. And I think it's been a good run of races. Now time to recharge and get back to it in Qatar.
Lovely stuff from the Ferrari drivers now. One driver who adores this track, and you can hear the frustration in his voice when it's not quite going right for him, and that's Fernando Alonso. Described himself as being thrown to the lions at one point during the Grand Prix. I love that. It's not just, guys, come on, you've screwed me. It's like you have thrown me to the lions. This Shakespearean wrath that comes out of him in the midst of the fight. Did they throw him to the lions, or was that the optimum strategy for Aston today?
I'll let you answer.
They started on the soft. They started on the soft, which was a bit too different, to be honest, and then had to pit Fernando pretty early, didn't they? And that's the moment when he knew, because when you pit early like that, you shuffle every single stint back, and he's the brilliant, experienced head that he is, was already thinking for the end of the race and seeing himself under pressure at the end of those stints. And that was the moment. I think they did, to be honest. I think starting on the soft tyre with this kind of temperature was the wrong call today. Both AlphaTauris did it as well, and it didn't really work out for them either. So, they cost Fernando today for sure.
Well, lovely stuff. Well, then let's hear from Fernando on a day when he made up positions, but I think we'll probably have ended it quite frustrated. Let's hear from him.
Well, Fernando, starting on the softs today, I thought it was a bold call, but it got you up to 6th on lap 1. Talk us through that and then how the rest of your race progressed.
Yeah, it was a good race. I think mega start up to P6, and then we had a good pace in the race. I think we didn't optimize the strategy. Maybe we stopped too soon at the beginning, too early. Maybe that compromised a little bit the final result. But we were fast, and the pace was a little bit better than expected. So I had fun in the car.
fast, but it must be frustrating to see the McLaren, Mercedes, Ferrari group going slightly away from you. What's in the pipeline for Aston Martin before the end of the year?
Yeah, I think today we had a little bit more than the result shows. I think P6 and definitely P7 was possible after the start, but yeah, obviously McLaren's a little bit too far ahead at the moment. We need to see. Everyone is working flat out in the factory to bring some new parts before the end of the season, so let's see what we can bring.
Amazing to think at the start of the season, Aston Martin were the team that unexpectedly were the ones who looked closest to Red Bull Racing. Now we stand here. They're in a fight for 5th place in the Constructors' Championship, potentially against McLaren, who are resurgent in the second half of the year. But the target team throughout has remained the same. Red Bull Racing crowned world champions for a 6th time today. Pietro, when we see a team functioning like Red Bull, what do the other teams in the paddock think? What do they see when they see a team like Red Bull doing what they do?
I think they see that there's much more that can be gained on their side. You know, they see the performance that Red Bull is able to put out. I mean, look at the qualifying that Max had yesterday. I mean, 6/10 up the field in pole position. So I think they can see that they can extract a lot more from their race cars, or either change the development to get closer to Red Bull. You know, there's a big gap there still from the second best team to Red Bull right now.
And Alex, let's be under no illusions here. It has taken Red Bull the better part of 10 years to get themselves back into this position. It was the early 2010s when they had that period of dominance with Sebastian Vettel, 4 years in a row, consecutive world championships. And it's taken them until the early 2020s, and now almost the mid-2020s, to get back to that point of absolute domination.
When Red Bull rocked up in the paddock, people were calling them the party team.
Yeah.
You know, and they are the party team now because they win everything. But it's, you know, it's just an incredible level of performance that they're able to achieve. But Singapore showed us how easy it is for that level of performance to fall away. It only takes them to get themselves in a little hole, in a much a similar way to the way I think that Aston Martin have recently. Find themselves in a car with a narrow window for next season, and we'll be looking at a new dominant team in Formula One, as is the nature and has always been the nature of this great sport.
And for both of you guys, as racing drivers who have raced at the absolute pinnacle of your chosen profession, to get a car underneath you that gives you everything this RB19 gives to Max Verstappen, to allow him to drive in the way that he is that the kind of thing you go to bed every night dreaming about?
Yeah, it's beautiful, you know. It's the perfect synchrony between the driver, his body, and the race car. You know, it's like everything is connected. When you have that car, it does what you want it to do. It fits your style very well. That's the perfect synchronization, I would say, between machine and human.
You know, when the car has difficult balance or you're struggling with grip, that's all the car. But you know, when the car's amazing, that's all you. Yeah, not at all.
Adrian, who?
It's the moment. It's the moment where you need to recognise that, and as they have today in winning the Constructors' Championship, bring home the bacon for the team, and also thank them for all of the work that they've done.
Which Max Verstappen has done with yet another victory in 2023. His team boss, Christian Horner, duly delighted with another world championship.
Well, Christian, firstly, congratulations on Max's win and the 6th Constructors' Championship. How proud are you of this team and what you guys have achieved?
Oh, hugely proud. I mean, this is a team effort. Through every single department, through all the support functions, every part of the business has had to do their bit to achieve this kind of success, and it's just been the most phenomenal ride so far this year. To have won our 6th Constructors' Championship here, still with 6 races to go, is, you know, more than we could have ever dreamt about.
Absolutely astonishing, and Max is also on impeccable form. What can we expect for the rest of the season?
I think he just wants to keep this this wave running as long as he can, and I think that his performance today was again outstanding. I mean, he dominated the whole event, from the first lap in practice to that outstanding lap in quali yesterday to a 20-second lead by the end of the race. That was his target coming here, and he's definitely delivered.
Yeah, fantastic for him, but a very difficult race on the other side of the garage. Can you talk us through Checo's race and particularly rejoining after retiring?
Yeah, it was a tough race for Checo from the start. The run down to turn 1, he got pincered, and then that caused contact, I think, with Lewis. That damaged his front wing. He then had to come into the pit lane because it was a safety car. but passed Fernando coming into the pit lane, which is why he got a penalty. Then went back out, and then obviously then got tied up with a Haas, got damage in the front wing again and the front steering. So he picked up a 5-second penalty, and we were very keen that we serve it here rather than take it forward into the next race. So that's why the mechanics did a great job in getting that car turned around.
Absolutely. Great work from all the team, and congratulations again. Thank you very much.
Lovely to hear from Christian Horner, and for all of those of you at home who have heard over the many years of F1 TV us referring to Producer Joe, that's what Producer Joe sounds like. So there you go. She's looking very embarrassed now standing over there. Right. Crucially now, guys, as part of that, Christian Horner saying we needed to serve the penalty here rather than carrying it on. So the rules, folks, if you have a 5-second penalty, but you DNF from the race and you cannot serve that 5-second penalty within the race, it transforms into a 3-place grid drop for the next Grand Prix. The last thing Sergio Perez needs is a grid drop, because let's be honest, his qualifying performances haven't been great. His in-race performances haven't been great either. 2 contacts in Singapore, a litany of errors in today's Grand Prix, but the decision to bring him in and then to send him out, we need to go through this. We need to discuss this because it's being talked about a lot in the world of social media. People saying, have they broken the rules? What have they done? And Alex, they haven't broken the rules here.
They haven't broken the rules as they stand, no. But I'm going to go for a gap here to get Le Mans into the broadcast, because when you finish the race at Le Mans, if you haven't completed a certain amount of the racing distance, then it doesn't count. It's a DNF. And I do think that kind of regulation here would nip this completely in the bud. You'd be able to say, no, you can't just head out onto the racetrack for no good reason, just to serve a penalty in avoidance of a later penalty, which is what they've done. In any case, I'm quite sure that this will be dealt with probably straight after this event.
If he'd served it and then DNF'd, we wouldn't be having this chat. It's the fact they brought the car in. It looked like they'd retired the car, only to suddenly, and again, from what it looked like, think, oh, you know what, guys? Actually, if we send him back out again, we can get this penalty done. Surely the only reason that he wasn't sent out for as long as he was is because Jonathan Wheatley was on the phone to race control saying, are we allowed to send him out again? Because these guys, listen, it's not about breaking the rules. It's about Red Bull knowing this rule book inside and out. And the stewards ultimately having to say, well, I suppose by the letter of the law that's correct, but the spirit of the regulations doesn't exist. If we can do it, we do it.
They made the right call. I mean, in my opinion, Red Bull, to avoid getting the penalty, they made that right call. Whether it was in regulation or not, or whether it's a gray area, that's another subject.
It's definitely within regulation. But listen, just as at the start of today with Logan Sargent, the confusion over whether the second chassis and the third chassis, had the third chassis already started to be made up significantly enough to be considered a third car? They're already talking about changing the wording around this. Is this a regulation that they need to think about rewording in the future?
Yeah, well, it's an ever-evolving concept, the regulations of the sport. You can't blame the player. You've got to blame the game, and the game needs to just tweak that element to say, look, park the car in the garage, you can't get it back out again for that reason.
Well, let's say Sergio had come back into the race after 10, 15 laps of sitting in the pits and decided, actually, we're going to take it through to the conclusion. Say a safety car comes out. Is he allowed to then catch up the 15 laps that he's been sat in the pits when we thought he'd DNF for those 15 laps, and he's then back on the lead lap? How does it work? I mean,
that's the old NASCAR lucky dog rule, where you make your laps back.
What's the end of it? Surely there has to be a point of when you step out of the car in the garage, you're out. Surely.
I mean, I think in a sprint, in a Grand Prix, if you park the car up in the garage and you step out of the car,
that's it.
You're out of it. You're out of the race, aren't you? I mean, the short answer is have teams declare when they've DNF'd.
Yeah.
And I suppose they just never will. Just in case they...
No, we just brought him in for repairs.
Actually, I didn't say DNF, I said...
Yeah. Exactly, yes. When we said bring the car in to retire, what we meant was... Sergio, let's talk about his races, these last two, Singapore and here, a litany of mistakes from him. What is going on with Sergio Perez? Because he's a Grand Prix winning driver. He's a phenomenal racer on his day. What is going on with Sergio that is creating these mistakes that are not representative of a driver of this quality and this experience?
Yeah, it's so difficult for me to see, because he's a friend of mine, and I know the race driver he is, and he started the season so well. He was, leading the championship at one point this season, and I just don't know what happened. He's kind of got into the snowball effect where the results haven't come, and it's just kind of getting more pressure every weekend, and it's these little mistakes that are costing him good results, and the pressure keeps mounting on.
Now, it was the mistake with Tsunoda that ultimately put Tsunoda out of the race. This, the impact with Albon, for which he received a 5-second penalty that had absolutely no effect on his Grand Prix result. Alex, I think one of the big questions I want to ask here again is about penalties. Is a 5-second penalty enough for these kind of contexts? Do we need to bring back drive-through penalties? Were the penalties decided too fast today? And I know that sounds weird, but they seem to be decided so quickly that actually the full gravity of what these incidents had caused weren't known when they were made.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions there, and there's a lot of context around. But I do think that the structure of the sport, the structure of the point system that we have at the moment entices a move like the one on Alex Albon. If you're at the back end of the points, you want to try and get into the points. Yeah, for me, I've always thought that penalties should have an element of consequence applied to them, and it's always the injured party will always look at the driver who's made contact with them if it's a slam dunk penalty and say, hold on a minute, I'm out of the race. Why is that driver only 5 seconds down the road still picking up points from the Grand Prix? Then, of course, there's the difficulty of fair application of the rules and the fact we do have a written, codified document about how these penalties are to be applied and should have.
And that we penalise the incident rather than the outcome. But I know you say there needs to be an element of that that's reworked.
The context is in that document. The context of a move, if it's a last lap lunge or the tyre mileage is taken into account, everything is taken into account by the stewards. But perhaps we need to look at it and say it's impossible to finish ahead of a driver you've taken out of the race. The outcomes of that would be absolutely enormous. I'd have to think about it long and hard to come up with a slam dunk solution that would satisfy everybody watching the sport and all the competitors as well.
Surely, Pietro, this is because every race incident is unique. There is no such thing as a cover-all scenario. These moves that you do, that you put on as racing drivers, they exist in the grey areas. They will never be purely black and white.
100%. I don't think any incident is black and white, and I think it's very difficult to always put a certain penalty of, there was a race incident involved. It wasn't a racing incident. There was a penalty. It's only 5 seconds. No, because what if that driver had continued, or if that driver ended up staying out of the race? Is 5 seconds enough? Because, for example, when Sergio hit Kevin today, he dropped back 30 seconds. So Kevin was fighting for 12th, 11th at the time. Maybe we wouldn't finish in the points, but then we were 30 seconds back.
And you're never going to know for that point.
No, and then you're never going to recover as well the 30 seconds. So basically the race you're racing for was over at that point of contact. So is 5 second penalty enough?
And exactly the same as what happened between Sergio and Alex Albon in Singapore. Robs them of the chance to possibly be in the points.
The one thing we can do to move towards consistency, I believe, is bring the same, if possible, or at least the core group, to every single race and
of stewards. But then do you fall into a scenario where drivers will claim favoritism or bias, that one driver consistently gets dealt with more harshly than the others because
you can say the same thing about the race director today.
Yeah.
But
this is the question. Look, I'm just posing the question.
Yeah, it certainly is a question, and that is the issue when I would always advocate having a steward room full of race car drivers, but then people have careers, people have, again, favourites, relationships, so on and so forth. It's a very, very small sport. And that's the issue with putting a steward's room full of drivers in front of almost a jury of their peers in front of these guys when they have an incident.
You've heard enough from us. Let's hear from Sergio Perez on what he thinks of his day out on track.
So Sergio, incident-packed race for you. Can you just talk us through the incidents, the lap one, incident, the hairpin, and then also the decision to send you back out on track?
Yeah, it was just a disastrous weekend. It all started into turn one with a really bad start, and I was squeezed down and I was just a passenger there and a sandwich. I think we carried a lot of damage in the car as well, and yeah, that just made it a lot harder for us.
Behind us, it looks like we're about to see Max win the race and give Red Bull the Constructors' Championship. Can you just tell us what this year has meant to you to be part of such a successful team?
Yeah, it's been an incredible year. I'm really happy to contribute to the Constructors. It's a very special day for the whole team to finally clinch that Constructor title. And yeah, it's been a tremendous year so far. The team has done an amazing job. It would have been really nice to clinch that championship with a 1-2 finish, but anyway, it's what it is.
Thank you.
Sergio Perez still en route to finish second in the Drivers' Championship, and that would be the first time that Red Bull, in winning the Constructors, had taken their drivers to a P1, P2 in the Drivers' Championship as well. Quite incredibly, overall of those years. Now, one team who have absolutely shown their strength over recent races has been McLaren. Zak Brown, the architect of all of that, and we can hear from him right now.
Zach, congratulations on your double podium here. Are you impressed with how the team have managed to turn this season around?
Yeah, the team's done a fantastic job. Oscar, great to see him get his first podium. That's exciting. And Lando's had quite a few now. We just need to go that one step further, but let's not get greedy. It's hard work, and all the men and women at McLaren have done such an awesome job to turn around our season, and still a lot of racing to go.
It's had a stronger race pace from Lando on those fresher tyres. How difficult was it to make the decision to swap them?
Well, it was pretty straightforward. There he is right there. And well done, Max. Well done, Max. And yeah, no, he was on fresher tires, and Lando got caught behind Perez. He wasn't sure if he could pass. It looked like Perez had a problem. So it was pretty easily sorted out, and 2 cars on the podium is a great way to finish the weekend.
Yeah, Lando's now finished second most of any driver this season, equal to Perez. Do you think there are more to come?
He probably doesn't like that stat. As good as that stat is, yeah, I think there's definitely more podiums ahead of us, and a lot of racing to go, and some teams we got to continue to chase.
And Oscar's first podium and a contract extension this weekend. A very fine performance for him all weekend. How proud are you?
Very. I'm glad we got it done last weekend, because the price has probably just gone up.
Absolutely. Thanks very much, and congratulations again.
Thank you very much.
Ever the businessman, Zak Brown. Producer Joe back on the questions with the stats too.
Drawing rays of sunshine out of Zak Brown.
Absolutely.
The result might have had something to do with it, but I'm sure it was mostly Producer Joe.
Mostly Producer Joe. Zak Brown, who spoke to him a couple of weeks ago, and I said, when you look back on the difficult decisions you had to make at the start of the season and getting rid of who you did and making the changes, do you ever doubt yourself? He said, nope. He said, just made me realize I shouldn't have doubted myself originally, and I should have made the changes 6 months earlier. I love that. And I love to see McLaren getting back to where we all expect them to be. Now, one place we don't expect Alex Jakes to be is out of the commentary box, but he is running around the paddock, and he's caught our number 3 driver today, Oscar Piastri, walking through the paddock with our boy Alex Jakes.
Oscar Piastri, Formula One podium finisher. How does that sound? Used to it yet?
It sounds very cool. I would say probably not my best Sunday afternoon of the year, but yeah, for it to end with a trophy, I'm very, very happy with that. So I'll enjoy the podium, I enjoyed the champagne, and we'll worry about how to go quicker in the next few days.
Yeah, nice. I like it. When you crossed the line, where did your mind go? Was it relief that it was over? Were you thinking about your family, your friends watching? Where does a driver's mind go when you've just taken your first podium?
Definitely a sense of relief. You know, it was a long afternoon, and yeah, definitely a bit tricky at some points of the race, but the last sort of 10 laps, once I got past Russell, were reasonably straightforward, I would say, apart from when I went off at turn 9. But yeah, just relief. You know, it's a long afternoon, got a lot of time to think about it, and you know, I knew Silverstone had played out basically exactly the same way, so I was just praying there wasn't another safety car.
Yeah, you were very patient behind Russell, but eventually that moment had to end, and you had to get past because you had a Ferrari coming very quickly behind you. How was that risk versus reward balance in those moments?
Yeah, I tried to get past as quick as I could. I was struggling a bit with traction out of the last chicane, but yeah, I knew when I made that move on Russell that I had to, and very happy I managed to make it stick. It was a bit 50-50. But no, very, very happy to pull that off, and really that gave me enough buffer over Leclerc for the rest of the race.
Take us back to the very start of the race. Take us back to getting gently chopped across by Max Verstappen. What are your thoughts in those moments?
Yeah, my launch was very good, and then I got a bit excited on the throttle pedal in the second part, and yeah, lost the advantage I had. And then yeah, I wasn't really far enough alongside. I could see Lando was on the outside as well. So yeah, at that point, even if I got in front of Max, I knew it wasn't going to be for long. So I thought it was better to stay in third and see what I could do from there.
Then we had the call for you to open the door for Lando. You played the team game well, and I imagine you're going to remember that.
Yeah, I mean, he was clearly a lot quicker than me today. That's probably the one frustration from today, was just the race pace was lacking a bit on my side. Yeah, you know, we were on very different age tyres at that point. So yeah, I was never going to be able to fend him off, but no, I think the team executed it perfectly. The aim was to have Papaya in second and third, and yeah, Lando was clearly deserving of second today, and myself third.
Tell me about the very start of the season, when you didn't have the car that you wanted. Did that allow you to learn the ropes in Formula One without being directly in the spotlight?
A little bit, yes. I think, you know, it's just a very different mindset in some ways. You know, at the start of the year, we were fighting for the back end of points on our good weekends. So it makes you almost, in some ways, more desperate to get those at some point. So, no, happy with the progress and the way we've managed to turn around. Definitely a few maybe weaker weekends at the beginning went a little bit more unnoticed. But no, I think as the car's improved as well, I feel like I've been able to improve with it and really try and get the most out of it.
The first of many, my friend. Well done. Enjoy tonight.
Thank you very much. I will.
Three questions, Jake. See, that's what McLaren said. 3 questions.
Oh, you're just jealous he won't talk to you for that long.
He's right there. He's right there. That was recorded a few minutes ago. You can turn it. He's right. Come on, Jakesy. Come on in. We'll give it to you because it's his first podium. Matt, how happy was he?
He was very happy. Do you want to run it again? Because it was so good. Do we have enough time?
I mean, we do have a finite amount of time for this show.
Yeah, it's so nice. It's one of the nice things about a junior commentary role, is that eventually you get a chance to see them succeed in Formula One, and that's what he's done today. And that meant a lot to him, and it meant a lot to his family.
And it must have meant a lot to you, mate. You followed him all the way through F3, F2. You know what he has been capable of. To see that for the first time in Formula One on a podium is it's a great thing.
Formula 3, Formula 2, it's like seeing a band before they're big. And now everyone knows how good he is, and yeah, special day.
We are those boring guys who knew them before they were famous.
And you tell everyone. But that's what you get on F1 TV, gang. It's bragging rights. That's why we're here. Right, just 2 drivers left to hear from today. It is Lando Norris in P2. As producer Joe told us, most second places this year, tied with Sergio Perez. And of course, he goes on and on, just impressing every single weekend. It is Max Verstappen back to the top step of the podium.
And an absolutely fantastic race from you today. Talk us about how you're feeling right now.
I'm very happy. Yeah, super happy. Just pretty much everything went our way today. But we prepared for it all. Great start. I think that was the key to a lot of stuff. I almost had Max as well. I had him into turn 1, just not turn 2. But he was not going to give it up easy, so I didn't. I fought, but yeah, I didn't want to take myself out of the race either. So it was a great race. The pace was very strong, better than everyone else behind by a decent amount. Not as good as Max, but not far away. You know, it wasn't like he just cruised away easily, and he couldn't pit, which was probably the best thing. He couldn't pit and go for fastest lap, which was a nice little bonus for us. Maybe he still had it, I don't know, but. Yeah, it was good, and double podium for us, which I'm most proud about, you know, for the whole team. For Oscar up there, his first podium in Formula One, I'm sure it's pretty special for him, so happy for him. Everyone in McLaren, it's been a very good day.
On your slowing down lap, you said Red Bull were coming for you. Is that starting to be the belief in the team as you build this momentum into 2024?
I mean, absolutely. We're not miles away. We're beating one of them already, just not the faster one, so... I mean, to be where we are now, I don't think any of us were expecting it or even thinking it in the beginning of the year. So we're definitely taking where we are
and we're taking our podiums, we're taking a double podium. But we know we still have a lot of things that we can improve, that we are going to improve. And in such a short amount of time from the beginning of the year, we've been able to turn things around massively and I'd say start to close the gap comparing to every other team to Red Bull. So I think that's a good sign. And yeah, it's only been 1 year of a good amount of progress and we know a lot of things to come. So I'm excited for the future.
Well done. Well, Max, from where I was standing, that looked very easy. I'm sure winning the Japanese Grand Prix is never easy. Talk to me about your race, starting with lap 1, turn 1 with Lando.
Yeah, it was a bit tight in turn 1 and 2, but we managed to keep the lead, which I think was most important. And basically from there onwards, I could just focus on my own pace and look after my tires. And yeah, we just had a bit more pace than everyone behind us, so we could pull away and yeah. No real issues throughout the race, which I think is always very nice when you can say that.
Obviously, that gives you, Sergio, and Red Bull the Constructors' Championship. The RB18 was already a very good car last year, but the RB19, just talk us about what an effort it's been for the team to give you this car this year.
Yeah, it's of course a very proud moment for everyone here at the track, back at the factory. Yeah, I think the season we are having is just incredible. I think everyone can be very, very proud of that, and I think we will even, in a few years' time, you look back at it and it probably brings a smile on your face again, just to remember what you have achieved as a team. But yeah, apart from Singapore, I mean, we have been dominant, and that's exactly as a team what you want to try and achieve all the time.
Congratulations.
Back to his best. Back to business. Max Verstappen back to the top step of the podium. Before we wrap things up here, Jakesy, you weren't part of the conversation earlier when we were discussing it, but the interesting way that Red Bull played the scenario with Sergio Perez, entirely, it would seem, within regulations, although an odd way of going about things.
Yeah, I was expecting a really fun cameo with him dive-bombing drivers and making his way through the field from the back, and instead we just cut to him in the pits multiple times. Bit farcical. Within the rules, I reckon that loophole will be tightened in the future.
I think so too, and for those who are newer fans, this does tend to happen in periods of dominance. I remember when I was a kid, the FIA, everyone thought it stood for Ferrari International Assistance because they seemed to get away with it. It wasn't that they were getting away with things that they shouldn't have been doing. It's just that at that time, they were such a smooth and slick operation. They figured out the loopholes. They figured out the wording of the regulations, how to extrapolate it, and then they'd have to close that loophole, close down the regs. It's what the teams who consistently win championships do. It's what makes them world championship winners, is to keep the FIA on their toes as much as their competitors. Right. That has been the weekend here. My thanks to all of you for your input over the weekend. It's been absolutely mega. What will you take away from this, Jakesy, this weekend here in Japan?
Just the event itself. My first time on site. I've never quite seen a crowd quite like this, supportive of every single driver out there, and one of the great circuits on earth.
Yeah, and for you, Alex?
Again, the magic of being here at Suzuka, the passion of the people here for Formula One. Verstappen back to his best and winning by a margin, but I did not mind at all when I was standing by the side of the racetrack watching the cars.
Pietro, it's a great place here, isn't it?
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, I've been here for 2 weeks. I was racing at Fuji last week, and I got a customized Kit Kat with my face on it. Some M&Ms today as well with my face and Gunther's face. So
come on,
it's always cool to be here in
Japan. You're taking the Kit Kats home for your sister, right?
Yeah, because there's one that has her face on it. So she's like, bring it back. But it's in my bag for 3 weeks now, so it's destroyed.
Oh, no.
I know.
Good job it's not been hot.
Yeah, good job it's not been hot. Exactly, mate. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget, you can watch the highlights of this Japanese Grand Prix on YouTube anytime you want, with Jakesy and Jolien giving their dulcet tones over the top of it. You can watch any race in history back anytime you want on F1 TV. But we hope you will join us next time for the Qatar Grand Prix. And here is where you can catch everything, should you wish to do so, on F1 TV. As always, we start things off on Thursday with the weekend warm-up. Then on Friday, it's practice 1 at 4:30 local time, with qualifying at 8 p.m. Saturday is a sprint day, which means it is the shootout at 4, the sprint itself at 8:30. Then we roll into race day Sunday, the 8th of October, for the Formula One Qatar Airways Qatar Grand Prix, 8 p.m. Your race start local time. Well, what a weekend it has been here in Japan. Our sincerest thanks to you all for tuning in and for following along. Red Bull Racing back to the top, back on form and constructors world champions. Can Max Verstappen move towards his 3rd world championship in Qatar? Join us then to find out. But for now, from all of us here, it's a very warm goodbye.